The massive starship Harmony's edge drifted through deep space like a silver needle threading through black cloth. Inside its gleaming corridors, beings from 12 different worlds worked together in what the Galactic Coalition called perfect harmony. But down in Engineering Section C, Chief Engineer Kim Hyun-woo was having the worst day of his career. "This is completely unacceptable," Captain Valtheri announced, his blue-scaled face twisted with disgust. The Zentarian captain stood nearly 8 feet tall, and when he was angry, his crest flared out like an angry peacock. "Your methods are primitive, Engineer Kim. They have no place on a modern starship." Hyun-woo wiped grease from his hands with an old cloth and looked up from the engine he was repairing. He was a short, stocky man with calloused fingers and kind eyes behind thick glasses. His uniform was always slightly dirty, unlike the spotless outfits worn by the alien crew members. "Sir, the engine is running at 98% efficiency," Hyun-woo said quietly. "That is higher than the manufacturer's specifications." "That is not the point," First Officer Kicksmill interrupted. The tall, gray-skinned hegemony officer held up a data tablet that glowed with complex readouts. "Your repair methods do not follow standard protocols. You use manual tools when automated systems are available. You perform calculations by hand. When the computer can do them faster, you even kick small paws dramatically. You even hit things with hammers." "Sometimes hitting things works," Hyun-woo replied with a small shrug. The assembled alien officers gasped. Chief Medical Officer Rick Stell, whose tentacled head bobbed with indignation, spoke next. "Engineer Kim, we are representatives of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. We cannot have crew members who behave like humans." Captain Valtheri finished coldly. Dr. Park Myung, the ship's xenobiologist and one of only 6 humans aboard, stepped forward. She was a tall woman with sharp features and fierce loyalty to her friends. "Captain, Engineer Kim's methods may look unusual, but his results speak for themselves. This ship has had 0 critical failures since he took charge of engineering." "'Cause our technology is superior," Kicksmell replied smoothly. "Any competent engineer could maintain these systems. We do not need someone who insists on doing everything the hard way." Hyun-woo said nothing. He had learned long ago that arguing with the alien command structure was pointless. They came from worlds where artificial intelligence handled most problems, where robots performed all manual labor, where thinking machines solved every puzzle, for organic minds even recognized there was a problem. They did not understand that sometimes the old ways worked better. Lee Sojin, Communications Officer, cleared her throat. She was young and eager, fresh out of the Coalition Academy. "Sir, perhaps we should consider—" "Silence," Captain Valtheri commanded. His crest flared higher. "This discussion is over. Engineer Kim, you are hereby relieved of your duties. Science Officer Zulkan will assume your responsibilities." The purple-skinned Altarian nodded smugly. Zulkan had lobbied for months to replace the human engineer, claiming that organic beings had no place in modern engineering. People had not touched a physical tool in over 1,000 years. "Sir," Hyun-woo said carefully, "we are approaching the Kepler void. I have studied the reports of the missing ships. I believe there may be. The Kepler void is a natural phenomenon," Captain Valtheri snapped. "Our sensors show nothing dangerous. Our computers have calculated safe passage routes. We do not need human superstition clouding our judgment." "Is not superstition?" Hyun-woo insisted, his voice growing urgent. "The ships that disappeared, the Stellar Crown, the Deep Explorer, the merchant vessel Golden Path, they all had one thing in common. They relied completely on automated systems. No manual backups, no human oversight." Commander Yoon-taemin, the tactical officer, frowned. He was a broad-shouldered man with careful eyes who had served with Hyun-woo for 3 years. "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting we should not enter the void," Hyun-woo said simply. "Or if we must, we should prepare manual backups for all critical systems." The alien officers exchanged looks of barely concealed amusement. "Manual backups?" Kicksmell repeated slowly, as if the words tasted bad. "Engineer Kim, This ship represents the pinnacle of coalition technology. We have quantum computers that can process more data in 1 second than a human brain can handle in a lifetime. We have self-repairing systems that can fix damage faster than you can even detect it. We have artificial intelligences that have never made an error. All technology can fail, Hyenwu said. Primitive technology fails, Science Officer Zulkan corrected. Advanced technology transcends such limitations. Captain Veltheri made his decision. Engineer Kim, you are confined to quarters for the duration of our passage through the Kepler void. Perhaps isolation will help you understand the foolishness of your position. Chief Security Officer Choi Jin-ho stepped forward reluctantly. Gin-ho was a mountain of a man who had fought beside Hyenwu during the Proxima Station crisis. Sir, I must formally object to... Your objection is noted and overruled, the captain snapped. Escort the former chief engineer to his quarters. The security detail led him away. Hyenwu caught Dr. Park's eye. She looked worried. He knew she shared his concerns about the void, but there was nothing either of them could do now. The human quarters were located in the lower sections of the ship, away from the command levels, where the important alien officers lived. As the door sealed behind him, Hyenwu sat heavily on his narrow bunk and looked around the small room. Most crew quarters contained advanced entertainment systems and holographic displays. Hyenwu's room was different. The walls were covered with hand-drawn technical diagrams, physical books printed on actual paper, and a collection of manual tools that the aliens considered museum pieces. He pulled out a worn notebook and began sketching. If the ship was going to enter the Kepler void, he wanted to be ready for anything. The alien officers trusted their computers and their artificial intelligences. But Hyenwu trusted something more reliable. He trusted his own hands and his own mind. Outside his small porthole, the stars began to look strange as the Harmony's edge approached the edge of known space. The Kepler void waited ahead like a hungry mouth, and somewhere in his gut, Hyenwu knew that all their advanced technology was about to be tested in ways the aliens could not imagine. He kept sketching, preparing for a crisis that only he seemed to expect. The Harmony's edge crossed into the Kepler void at exactly 0800 hours ship time. At first, nothing seemed different. The bridge crew watched their screens show the same empty blackness they had seen for weeks. Captain Velthari leaned back in his command chair with satisfaction. You see, he said to First Officer Kicksmal, human fears are always groundless. Our sensors detect nothing unusual. But 30 minutes later, Science Officer Zulkan frowned at his console. The purple-skinned Altarian tapped his screen several times, then shook his head in confusion. Captain, I am getting some unusual readings. Define unusual, Velthari ordered. The sensors show we are moving through empty space, but also through solid rock. The computer says we are at normal atmospheric pressure, but also underwater. The navigation system reports our location as, well, inside something organic. Kicksmal moved to check the readings himself. His gray face paled to almost white. This is impossible. These readings contradict each other. Obviously a sensor malfunction, Captain Velthari declared. Run a full diagnostic. While the alien crew worked frantically at their stations, something strange began happening to the ship itself. The walls started to shimmer like heat waves rising from hot pavement.
Oh.
Crew members walking through the corridors felt dizzy as if the floor was moving beneath their feet in directions that did not exist. In the medical bay, Chief Medical Officer Rick Stell watched his instruments with growing alarm. His tentacled head writhed as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The life support readings are fluctuating wildly. Oxygen levels are normal, but the sensors also show we are breathing liquid methane. On the bridge, the main view screen flickered. For just a moment, instead of showing empty space, it displayed something impossible. The ship appeared to be flying through the inside of a massive tunnel, made of what looked like living tissue. Veins pulsed along the walls and strange lights flickered in the distance. Then the screen went back to showing normal space. Did anyone else see that? Communications Officer Lee Sojin asked nervously. See what? Captain Velthari demanded. But his voice sounded less confident than before. The answer came 5 minutes later, when reality shifted again. This time, everyone felt it. The ship lurched sideways, but not in any direction that made sense. Up became down, left became inside, and for a terrifying moment, the crew felt like they were falling through the floor into the ceiling. When everything stopped spinning, they found themselves floating. Not because the artificial gravity had failed, but because they were somehow underwater. The bridge was filled with a thick, breathable liquid that tasted like copper and fear. Fish-like creatures with too many eyes swam past the view screen. "This is impossible," Kicksmall gasped, his words coming out in bubbles. "Impossible or not, it is happening," Dr. Park Mi-young said. She had rushed to the bridge when the alarm started. Blaring, as the ship's xenobiologist, she was used to studying strange life forms, but nothing had prepared her for this. "We need to get Hyeon-woo. He warned us about something like this." "Absolutely not," Captain Valtheri snarled, though his anger was hard to take seriously while he was floating upside down in the mysterious liquid. "That primitive human got us into this mess with his bad luck. Another shift hit them before anyone could argue." The liquid vanished. Gravity returned with a stomach-churning lurch. Suddenly, they were flying through what looked like the inside of a massive clockwork mechanism. Gears the size of buildings turned slowly around them, and the ship's hull scraped against metal surfaces that rang like cathedral bells. Science. Officer Zulkan stared at his instruments in complete bewilderment. Nothing makes sense anymore. The computer cannot process these readings. Every sensor gives a different answer. We could be anywhere. We could be nowhere. The artificial intelligence that normally handled navigation began speaking in a voice that sounded increasingly panicked. "Error. Error. Unable to determine location. Unable to determine physics parameters. Unable to determine reality status. Recommend immediate shutdown of all systems to prevent cascade failure." "No," Captain Valtheri ordered. "Keep all systems online. We need them to get out of this." Yet keeping the systems online was becoming impossible. Each reality shift seemed to make the technology more confused. The ship's advanced computers were trying to make sense of a place where the laws of physics changed every few minutes. They were built to work in a logical, predictable universe, not in a nightmare where water could be breathed and solid rock could be flown through. Down in the human quarters section, Choi Ginho made a command decision. The big security chief had watched 3 alien crew members collapse from stress-induced seizures. The advanced minds that made the alien species so intelligent also made them vulnerable to incomprehensible situations. Their brains simply shut down when faced with complete logical impossibility. "We need Hyeon-woo," he told the 2 guards outside the engineer's door. Both were Zentarian junior officers who looked like they were about to faint. "The ship is falling apart. Captain's orders." ... double quotes, one guard began weakly. "The captain's orders are going to get us all killed," Jinho replied bluntly. "Look around you. Does this look like a situation where normal rules apply?" The guard stepped aside. Jinho found Hyeon-woo sitting calmly at his small desk, working on hand-drawn diagrams by the light of an old-fashioned electric lamp. While the rest of the ship's lighting flickered and failed, the simple bulb burned. Steadily. "You have been expecting this," Ginho observed. Hyeon-woo looked up and nodded. "The void does not like complicated things. It breaks them down, tries to make them simpler. Our advanced technology is fighting against something that does not follow any rules we understand. Can you fix it? Can try." Hyeon-woo stood and gathered his tools. "But we need to get to the main engineering section before the next shift." They ran through corridors that kept changing around them. Sometimes the ceiling was the floor. Sometimes the walls were made of flowing water. Sometimes they had to push through air that was thick as honey. But Hyeon-woo seemed to have an instinct for navigating the chaos, always finding the path that led forward. When they reached the main engineering section, they found Science Officer Zulkan standing in the middle of the room, staring blankly at displays that showed nothing but random patterns. The proud Altarian who had boasted about never needing manual tools was completely broken by an environment that his advanced mind could not process. "Time to get to work," Hyeon-woo said quietly, rolling up his sleeves. Hyeon-woo walked into the main engineering section and immediately knew they were in serious trouble. The room that should have been filled with the gentle hum of perfectly tuned machinery was instead echoing with alarms, sparking cables, and the sound of things breaking apart. Science Officer Zul Khan stood in the center of the chaos. His purple skin turned almost gray with shock. The proud Altarian who had claimed that advanced beings did not need manual skills was now staring helplessly at displays that showed nothing but meaningless symbols and flashing red warnings. "The quantum processors are overloading," Zul Khan whispered. "The artificial intelligence core is experiencing cascade failures. Everything is breaking down at once. Step aside," Hyenwu said gently but firmly. "You cannot fix this with your primitive tools," Zul Khan replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes. This requires advanced computational analysis, quantum field manipulation, subspace harmonic adjustment." "No," Hyenwu interrupted, pulling a simple toolkit from his belt. "This requires someone who knows how things actually work." He knelt beside the main power coupling and opened his toolkit. Inside were things that made the alien crew members shake their heads in disbelief. Actual wrenches made of metal, a hammer with a wooden handle, screwdrivers that had to be turned by hand, wire cutters that required physical strength to operate. "You cannot be serious," Zul Khan said. "Those tools are thousands of years old, and they still work." Hyenwu replied calmly. The ship shuddered. Around them, as another reality shift began. Through the viewports, they could see that space itself was twisting like taffy being pulled. Stars stretched into long streamers of light. Darkness between them rippled like water inside the ship. The advanced computer systems went completely insane. Displays showed that they were simultaneously moving forward, backward, up, down, and through 17 dimensions that did not have names. The artificial intelligence that controlled life support began speaking in languages that had never existed. "Oxygen. Levels critical," the AI announced in a voice that sounded like singing whales. "Hull integrity optimal. We are all dead. You're all perfectly safe. Recommend immediate evacuation to the center of the sun." The alien crew members who were still conscious began to panic. Their minds, trained to rely on logical systems and predictable technology, simply could not handle the contradictions. Several more collapsed, so overwhelmed by sensory input that made no sense. But Hyenwu ignored the chaos around him and focused on the task at hand. He disconnected the main power coupling from the quantum processor and began rewiring it by hand, instead of relying on the computer to manage power distribution. He created a manual system using actual physical switches and mechanical relays. "What are you doing?" Dr. Park Myon asked. She had fought her way down from the medical section where she had been trying to help the crew members who were having mental breakdowns. "Making things simple," Hyenwu replied without looking up from his work. "The void is confusing our computers because they are trying to understand something that cannot be understood. But a simple circuit does not need to understand anything. It just needs to work." As he spoke, he pulled out a length of heavy cable and began connecting it directly from the power generators to the life support systems. No computers, no artificial intelligence, no quantum processing. It's just electricity flowing through metal from one place to another. The life support systems stuttered back to life. The air in the engineering section began to smell normal again, instead of carrying the strange. It's a mixture of ozone and flowers that had been making everyone dizzy. "What is working?" Zul Khan said in amazement. "But how is that possible? You bypassed all the safety systems, all the optimization protocols, all the efficiency enhancers, all the things that were breaking," Hyenwu pointed out. "Sometimes the best solution is the simplest solution." Choi Jin-ho appeared in the doorway, his face grim. "Hyenwu, we have bigger problems. The navigation system is completely dead. We're flying blind through whatever this place is." "Ken, you get me to the bridge?" Hyenwu asked. "The corridors keep changing," Jin-ho warned. "What was a hallway 5 minutes ago is now filled with some kind of crystal formation. And I think I saw something moving in there." "We will manage," Hyenwu said. He gathered his tools and turned to Dr. Park. "Myung, I need you to stay here and keep the manual systems running. If anything starts to fail, do not try to fix it with the computer. Just disconnect it and find a simpler way." I am not an engineer, she protested. Today we are all engineers, he replied. Jin-ho, lead the way. The journey to the bridge was like traveling through a nightmare designed by someone who had never understood what nightmares were supposed to be. The corridors twisted in directions that hurt to think about. The walls were sometimes metal, sometimes living wood, sometimes made of what looked like crystallized music. But Hyen-woo moved through it all with the calm confidence of a man who had spent his life solving problems that seemed impossible. They encountered a hallway filled with floating geometric shapes that sang in harmony. He simply pushed them aside. When they had to climb through a section where gravity pointed sideways, he helped Jin-ho find handholds and kept moving forward. How are you staying so calm? Jin-ho asked, as they crawled through what had once been a vertical shaft, but was now twisted into a pretzel shape. This is just another job site, Hyun-woo replied. I have worked in zero gravity, underwater, and toxic atmospheres, in places where the temperature could kill you in seconds. Strange places have strange rules, but they always have some kind of rules. You just have to figure out what they are and work within them. When they finally reached the bridge, they found Captain Valtheri and his remaining officers huddled around the command console like survivors of a shipwreck. The main view screen showed something that might have been space, or might have been the inside of a vast living creature, or might have been both at the same time. Engineer Kim, Captain Valtheri said, and for the first time since Hyen-woo had known him, the proud Zentarian sounded genuinely humble. Our systems are completely non-functional. We cannot navigate, we cannot communicate, we cannot even determine our location. Then we will do it the old way, Hyen-woo said simply. He walked to the navigation console and began disconnecting the quantum computer that normally handled their course calculations. In its place, he installed a simple compass, a mechanical chronometer, and a device that looked like it belonged in a museum, a sextant. First Officer Kicksmell asked in disbelief, You are going to navigate interstellar space with a sextant? I am going to navigate wherever we are with whatever works, Hyen-woo corrected. And right now, simple tools work better than complicated ones. The ship shuddered again as reality shifted around them. This time, when the chaos settled, they still had life support, they still had power, and they still had hope. It was a start. The calm lasted exactly 4 hours and 17 minutes. Hyen-woo had been keeping track with an old mechanical watch that his grandfather had given him. One of the few timepieces on the ship that still worked reliably. He was in the middle of installing manual backup controls for the navigation system when reality twisted again, harder than before. This time was different. This time was worse. The second shift did not just change what they could see or feel. It changed the rules of how things worked. Hyun-woo watched in fascination as a wrench he dropped fell upward toward the ceiling, then stopped in midair and began to spin slowly while humming a tune he almost recognized around him. The engineering section transformed into something that hurt to look at directly. Walls became transparent, but instead of showing the space outside, they showed the inside of the walls themselves, stretching away in impossible directions. He could see the wiring and pipes extending forever, like looking down an endless tunnel made of the ship's own internal structure. What is happening now? Lee So-jin asked. Her voice sounded strange, as if she was speaking from very far away, even though she stood right next to him. The void is getting stronger, Hyen-woo replied calmly. He picked up a different wrench and was relieved when it stayed in his hand and behaved normally. It is testing us with bigger changes. But the alien crew members were not handling the new conditions well at all through the ship's communication system, which was one of the few things still working thanks to Hyen-woo's simple repairs. They could hear the chaos spreading through every section. Captain Valtheri's voice came over the intercom, but he sounded nothing like the confident leader who had dismissed human methods just days before. All crew to emergency stations are experiencing severe reality distortion. Repeat, severe reality distortion. Dr. Park Myung's voice followed immediately. Medical emergency on Deck 7. I need all available personnel. We have crew members who are aging backward. I repeat, aging backward. Hyun-woo grabbed his tool bag and headed for the door. Sejin, stay here and watch the manual controls. If anything stops working, do not try to fix it with the computer. Just turn it off and turn it back on." "Where are you going?" she called after him, to see how bad this really is. The journey through the ship was like traveling through the dreams of a mad god. In some sections, time moved so slowly that crew members appeared frozen like statues. In others, everything happened too fast, and he watched a Zentarian engineer repair the same broken console dozens of times in a few seconds. His movements blurred with speed. The most disturbing section was Deck 7, where he found Dr. Park, standing helplessly beside 3 alien crew members who were indeed aging backward. A middle-aged hegemony officer was now physically a teenager and getting younger by the minute. His adult memories were intact, but his body was shrinking and his voice was getting higher. "I do not understand what is happening to them," Dr. Park said desperately. "All my medical equipment says they are perfectly healthy, but they are getting younger every few minutes. If this continues, they will simply ... disappear. It is the same problem as everything else," Hien Wu observed. "The void does not follow our rules, so our equipment cannot understand or fix what it does to us." He knelt beside the youngest affected crew member, a Zentarian, who had been reduced to the physical age of about 10 years old, but still retained his adult mind. "How do you feel?" Hien Wu asked. Confused, the small Zentarian replied in a voice that squeaked with youth. "My thoughts are the same, but my body feels different. Lighter, more energy, but also simpler." Hien Wu nodded thoughtfully. "The void is making you simpler, just like it made our technology simpler by breaking it. But maybe simpler is not always worse." Over the next hour, they discovered something remarkable. The crew members who had been affected by the backward aging were also the ones who adapted most quickly to the new reality around them. Their younger bodies seemed more flexible, were able to accept impossible things as normal. The 10-year-old Zentarian was the first to figure out how to walk on the walls in the sections where gravity pointed sideways. A teenage Altarian discovered that she could somehow sense which corridors were safe to travel through and which ones had become dangerous. A young hegemony officer found that he could understand the strange symbols that appeared on the broken computer screens. They are becoming more like humans, Dr. Park realized. More adaptable, more willing to accept things that do not make logical sense. But while some crew members were getting younger, others were having different problems. First Officer Kixmel had become trapped in a section where cause and effect worked backward. Every time he tried to repair something, it broke before he touched it. When he attempted to give orders, his words came out before he spoke them, confusing everyone around. Science Officer Zulkan was experiencing something even worse. He had become unstuck in time, experiencing moments from his past, present, and future all at once. Sometimes he was a child on his home planet, sometimes he was an old man looking back on his career, and sometimes he was himself at this moment. Trying to understand what was happening to him, Hien Wu found him in the science lab, sitting on the floor and crying. The proud Altarian, who had once boasted about his people's advanced civilization, is now completely broken by an environment that his logical mind could not process. "I can see everything," Zulkan whispered. "I can see my birth, my death, my first day at the academy, the moment we entered this cursed place. It is all happening at the same time. How do you humans live with such chaos in your minds?" "We do not think about everything at once," Hien Wu replied gently. "We focus on one problem at a time. One moment at a time." He helped Zulkan to his feet and guided him to a chair. "Right now, in this moment, you are sitting in the science lab. Focus only on that. Do not worry about the past or the future. Just be here now." It was slow work, but gradually Zulkan began to stabilize. The key was teaching him to limit his awareness, to deliberately ignore most of what his enhanced mind was trying to process. It went against everything his people had taught him about expanding consciousness and embracing complexity. But it worked. Meanwhile, Choi Jin-ho was having his own problems. The big security chief had become responsible for protecting crew members, who were experiencing physical changes that defied explanation. Some had grown extra arms that allowed them to work in the twisted geometry of the ship's altered sections. Others had developed the ability to see in spectrums of light that did not exist. "The void is changing us," he reported to Hien Wu during one of their brief meetings. "Some changes are helpful, some are not. But the ones who fight the changes suffer more than the ones who accept them. Then we learn to accept, Hien-Wu said simply. We adapt, like humans have always adapted. But we are not all human, Jinho pointed out. Today we are, Hien-Wu replied. Today we all learn to think like humans, or we do not survive. As if responding to his words, the ship shuddered again, and reality prepared to shift into something even stranger. After the 7th reality shift, Hien-Wu finally understood what they were fighting against. He sat in his quarters, surrounded by pages of handwritten notes and sketches, while the ship groaned and twisted around him like a living thing in pain. But for the first time since entering the void, he was smiling. It is not random, he said to Dr. Park Mi-young, how had come to check on him after the latest shift had turned half the medical bay into what appeared to be a garden growing upside down from the ceiling. The void is not just changing things for no reason. It is learning from us. Learning what? She asked, settling carefully into the chair across from his desk. Even sitting had become complicated, when gravity might decide to point in 3 directions at once. How we think, how we solve problems, how we respond to challenges. Hien-Wu showed her his notes, which were covered with diagrams tracking each reality shift and the crew's responses. Look at the pattern. Every time we use advanced technology to fix a problem, the next shift makes that technology more useless. Every time we rely on computer analysis, the void gives us situations that computers cannot analyze. Dr. Park studied his drawings with growing amazement. The pattern was clear once it was pointed out. When Science Officer Zulken had tried to use quantum sensors to understand their location, the next shift had put them in a place where quantum physics did not work. When Captain Valtheri had ordered the artificial intelligence to calculate escape routes, the following shift had made the concept of direction meaningless. But when we use simple solutions, she began. The void accepts them, Hien-Wu finished. When I fixed the life support with basic wiring, it kept working through every shift. When Jinho started organizing rescue teams using voice commands instead of electronic coordination, those teams stayed effective no matter how strange things became. So the void rewards simplicity and punishes complexity. Not exactly. Hyun-Woo leaned back in his chair, which had recently developed the habit of spinning slowly in a direction that was neither left nor right. I think it rewards adaptability. It rewards minds that can accept change without breaking. And it punishes minds that need everything to make perfect logical sense. As if to prove his point, the ship's intercom crackled to life with Captain Valtheri's voice. But the proud Zentarian no longer sounded like the confident leader who had dismissed human methods. He sounded tired, confused, and desperate. All remaining crew members report to the main conference room. We need to discuss our situation. The conference room had become a strange place where the table was sometimes solid wood, sometimes flowing water, and sometimes made of crystallized light depending on who was looking at it. The surviving crew members sat around it in various states of transformation and confusion. Captain Valthari looked older than when they had entered the void, his blue scales dulled with stress. First Officer Kicksmell sat beside him, but the gray-skinned hegemony officer now flickered in and out of existence every few seconds, as if the void could not decide whether he should be there or not. Science Officer Zulkan had stabilized somewhat after learning to focus on single moments, but his purple skin had taken on a silver tint that shifted and changed like liquid metal. The remaining alien crew members showed similar signs of change, as if the void was slowly remaking them into something that could survive in its impossible environment. The human crew members, by contrast, looked relatively normal. They were tired and stressed, but they had not undergone the dramatic transformations affecting their alien colleagues. Engineer Kim, Captain Valtheri began formally. The command structure recognizes that our previous methods have been inadequate. Sir Hyun-Woo replied respectfully. We are all learning together. No, the captain said firmly. You understood from the beginning. You warned us about entering the void. You prepared for conditions that our best scientists said were impossible. You have kept this ship functioning when all our advanced systems failed. He paused, his crest flattening with what looked like shame. I hereby formally reinstate you as chief engineer and request your guidance in getting us safely out of this situation." Hyenwu stood and moved to the front of the room. Behind him, the wall display that should have shown ship schematics instead showed a constantly changing pattern of colors and shapes that seemed to respond to his thoughts. "The void is testing us," he said simply. "It wants to know if we can survive without depending on technology to solve every problem. It wants to know if we can adapt when the rules change completely." "Can we?" asked Commander Yoon Taman, the tactical officer who had remained relatively unchanged but had learned to navigate the ship's twisted corridors by following his instincts rather than maps. "Some of us can," Hyenwu replied. "The crew members who have adapted best are the ones who learn to think like humans, accept contradiction, focus on practical solutions instead of perfect understanding, work with their hands instead of just their minds." He turned to address the alien officers directly. "Your people became advanced by mastering complexity, by building machines that could think faster and more logically than biological minds. But in this place, that advancement is a weakness." Science Officer Zulkan raised his hand tentatively. "What do you recommend?" "We prepare for the final test," Hyenwu said, "because there will be one. The void has been escalating its challenges with each shift. Soon it will throw something at us that strips away everything we think we understand about survival itself." "How do we prepare for something like that?" Dr. Park asked. "By learning the most basic skills," Hyenwu replied. "Skills that do not depend on technology or even on physics working the way we expect." He looked around the room at the mixed group of humans and transformed aliens. "I need volunteers to learn how to tie knots that will hold in any gravity, how to start fires without electronic igniters, how to find direction without instruments." Captain Velthari straightened in his chair. "You were talking about survival training from before our species reached the stars. I am talking about survival training that will work after the stars stop making sense," Hyenwu corrected. Over the next several hours, the strangest classroom in galactic history took shape in the ship's cargo bay. Hyenwu taught alien officers how to use rope and leverage to move heavy objects when the artificial gravity failed. Dr. Park showed them how to purify water using cloth filters and settling techniques that had worked for thousands of years. Choi Jin-ho demonstrated hand-to-hand combat methods that would work regardless of which direction was up. Most importantly, they all practiced the hardest skill of all, making decisions quickly when nothing made logical sense. The young Zentarian, who had been aged backward by the void, proved to be an excellent student. His childlike body adapted quickly to the physical challenges, while his adult mind provided the wisdom to understand why these simple skills mattered. "It is like learning to be primitive," he observed while practicing knots. "It is learning to be human," Hyenwu corrected gently. "And right now, being human might be the most advanced thing we can do." As if responding to his words, the ship began to shake with a vibration unlike anything they had experienced before. Through the cargo bay windows, they could see that space outside was beginning to dissolve entirely. The final test was beginning. The final shift was unlike anything that had come before. It did not change the laws of physics or twist reality into impossible shapes. Instead, it took everything away. Hyenwu felt it happening before he could see it. The familiar hum of the ship's engines faded to silence. The gentle pressure of artificial gravity disappeared, leaving him floating in the cargo bay, where he had been teaching knot tying to a group of increasingly desperate alien officers. The lights went out, not flickering or failing, but simply ceasing to exist as if they had never been there at all. But the strangest part was the walls. The solid metal barriers that had protected them from the vacuum of space began to fade like morning mist. Hyenwu could see through them, then see past them, until finally he was floating in open space, with nothing around him except his fellow crew members and the rapidly disappearing framework of what had once been their ship. "Stay calm," he called out, his voice somehow carrying in the airless void. "This is what we prepared for." Around him, the alien crew members, who had not learned to adapt, were already in trouble. Captain Velthari thrashed wildly in panic as he found himself breathing vacuum that somehow did not kill him. First Officer Kicksmall flickered faster than ever, appearing and disappearing so rapidly that he looked like a strobe light. but the crew members who had embraced the training were responding differently. The young Zentarian who had been aged backward moved through the space with confidence, using the rope techniques Hyenwu had taught him to connect himself to Dr. Park Myung. Commander Yuntaman floated calmly nearby, his tactical training helping him assess their situation without panic. "The ship is gone," Lee So-jin observed. She sounded frightened, but not hysterical, floating with her arms and legs spread to maintain stability in the zero gravity. "The ship was never real in this place," Hyenwu replied. "Or it was real, but reality is not what we thought it was." Around them, space itself began to change. The stars that had been distant points of light started to move closer, growing larger and brighter, until the crew found themselves floating in a vast chamber made of living starlight. The walls pulsed with colors that had no names, and patterns of energy flowed through the air like slow lightning. "What is this place?" Dr. Park asked, her scientific mind struggling to categorize what she was seeing. "I think this is what the void really is," Hyenwu said slowly. "Not empty space, but something alive, something that has been testing us to see if we were worthy to meet it." As if responding to his words, a presence made itself known. It was not a voice or a physical form, but a sense of vast intelligence that touched each crew member's mind gently. When it communicated, each person heard the words in their own language, spoken in a way that felt like their own thoughts. "You have passed the trials," the presence said. "Most who enter this realm fail because they cannot release their dependence on the tools that made them feel powerful. They cling to their machines and their certainties until both destroy them." Captain Velthari, who had finally stopped panicking and was floating quietly nearby, spoke with a humility that would have been unthinkable just days before. "What were you testing us for?" "To see if your species could survive in the universe that exists beyond the comfortable boundaries of your home systems." The presence replied, "The galaxy is vast and full of wonders and terrors that cannot be understood through logic alone. Those who explore its furthest reaches must be adaptable above all else." Science Officer Zul Khan, his silver-tinted skin now glowing softly in the strange light, asked the question that all the alien crew members were thinking. "Why do humans seem to handle your tests better than we do?" "Because humans learned to survive on a world that was constantly trying to kill them," the presence answered. "They developed minds that could adapt to changing conditions, bodies that could work with primitive tools, and spirits that refused to surrender even when faced with impossible odds. These traits served them well when they reached for the stars, and they serve them well here." "But we can learn," said the young Zentarian earnestly. "You have changed some of us, made us more like them. We can adapt to." "Yes," the presence agreed, and there was something like approval in its vast consciousness. "That is why you survived when others did not. You learned to think beyond the limitations of your advanced civilizations. You learned to value wisdom over knowledge, adaptability over specialization, determination over perfection." Hyenwu felt a strange warmth spreading through his body. Around him, his fellow crew members were beginning to glow with the same soft light that filled the chamber. But instead of feeling afraid, he felt peaceful. This was not destruction, but transformation. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you return to your people and teach them what you have learned," the presence replied. "The universe is entering a new age, and those who would survive it must remember the old ways while embracing the new ones. Technology is a tool, but it must not become a crutch. Intelligence is a gift, but wisdom is what allows it to be used well." The chamber around them began to change again, but this time the change felt gentle and purposeful. The walls of living starlight gradually took on the familiar shape of the Harmony's edge. But the ship that reformed around them was different from the one they had lost. The new ship was simpler in some ways, more complex in others. The artificial intelligence that had once controlled every system was gone, replaced by manual controls that could be operated by thinking beings making conscious decisions. The quantum computers that had tried to analyze impossible data were replaced by instruments that measured what could be measured and admitted honestly when something was beyond their capabilities. But the ship was also improved. The hull was stronger, the life support more reliable, the engines more efficient. It was as if the void had taken their vessel apart and rebuilt it according to Principles that combined the best of advanced technology with the reliability of simpler methods. The repairs you made with your hands and your wisdom are now part of the ship's design. 8. The presence explained to Huyanwu. They will not fail again, because they are based on understanding rather than mere complexity. As the transformation completed, Huyanwu found himself standing in a familiar engineering section, but one that felt like it had been designed by someone who truly understood how machines and people could work together. The controls were intuitive, the systems robust. The backup's manual and reliable Captain Valthari appeared beside him, no longer flickering, but solid and real. The proud Zentarian looked around the new ship with wonder, then turned to Huyanwu with an expression of genuine respect. "Chief Engineer Kim," he said formally, "I owe you an apology. And more than that, I owe you my life and the lives of my crew." "No apology needed, Captain," Huyanwu replied with a small smile. "We all learned something important here." Outside, the viewport's normal space returned gradually, stars appearing in their proper positions as the Harmony's edge emerged from the Kepler void. But none of the crew members would ever be quite the same. They had learned that intelligence without adaptability was weakness, that technology without wisdom was dangerous, and that sometimes the most advanced solution was the simplest one. As they set course for home, Huyanwu returned to his workshop to begin writing the report that would change everything. But first, he took out his grandfather's old watch and wound it carefully, listening to its steady tick, marking the passage of time in a universe that had just become much larger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined.